Okay, so in this episode, we're going to talk about how to set up a contact form inside our website. And in the last couple episodes, we did actually talk about how to create the form, which you guys see right here, and how to style it so it looks nice. Now, the last thing we need to do with it is to actually make it do something. Because right now, if I were to fill out the information and then click submit, we get this piece of PHP code, which we did actually create back quite a few episodes ago. Well, in the form episode, we did actually create a file called form.php that had this piece of code in it. And that's actually what you guys see inside the browser. And the reason that you guys are seeing this is because right now our browser doesn't know, or at least our website doesn't know how to interpret PHP code. So as you guys can see, we'll actually be using a bit of PHP code in this episode. And I promise you guys, it's not hard what we're going to do. It's very easy PHP code. So if you guys want to learn how to make a contact form, I really recommend you guys following me in this episode, because creating a contact form inside your website is very valuable. So you don't have to just like put an email address somewhere inside your footer or header and tell people to copy this email and paste it into your Gmail and then send me an email. No, it's actually quite nice to have a contact form inside your website so they don't have to do all that stuff. So we will be using a bit of PHP, and because we're going to be using PHP, we're going to have to set up a local server, which, don't freak out, is not tough to do. It literally takes no more than a couple of minutes, not even a minute if you're really quick, to set up a server. And it's not something that's going to harm your computer. It's not harming anything on your computer. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we need to actually get the server running. So we're going to go inside a website called apachefriends.org and install a program called XAMPP, XAMPP, which you guys can either Google or just go ahead and find the website inside the browser, or like the link that I have up here. And then you're going to go ahead and download the version for either Windows, Linux, or Mac, whichever device you're sitting on right now, coding on. And once you have it installed, you're going to get this little program here called XAMPP. Now, I do want to mention that once you have this thing running, you should also pay attention to where you did actually install the program, because we will be needing to get into that folder where you installed it and put our website inside a folder inside XAMPP's folder. So pay attention to where you're actually installing it on your computer. So now, as I'm kind of expecting you guys to already have it installed. So once you guys have this little program running here, you'll notice that we get a bunch of buttons in it. The top ones, called Apache and MySQL, are the ones you're going to pay attention to, because these are the only two we need to run. So over here where it says Actions, it should on your screen say Start, so you can actually click it to start it. And you need to start both of these. So it actually says stop here. Now, I should also mention, if you have Skype open right now and you're trying to start them, and the Apache one is not letting you start, it's because you have Skype opened. So go ahead and close down Skype, run it, and then you can actually open Skype back up, and then it'll actually still be working. So just go ahead and do that if you have Skype open. So once we have these two running, we do actually have a server running on our computer. Yes, it's that easy. It's very easy to do. So now that we have the server running, I'm going to go ahead and go inside my root folder. And inside the folder I installed the XAMPP, which is on my D drive in my example. You guys may have it inside your C drive or something else. Doesn't really matter. Just go ahead and find it. And inside that folder, you're going to find XAMPP. So I do actually have a folder down here called XAMPP. Well, mine's called XAMPP2. Don't pay attention to that. Your folder will be called XAMPP. So just go ahead and open it up, and then you'll get a bunch of folders again. And the one we're interested in is the one called htdocs. Now, this folder, if you do actually want to use a lot of PHP code in the future, is going to be very valuable for you, because you're going to be using this folder quite often. So just go ahead and take it and put it on the side as a shortcut or something, because it's much easier in the future if you want to use this folder quite often, which you actually will if you want to use PHP, like I said. So just go ahead and put it out there in your Explorer. Now, what we can do here is then go inside this folder. And once we're in here, you'll notice that I do have a couple of folders in here. You guys might have an empty folder. You guys may have a folder with some stuff in it. If you do have something in this folder and you just installed it, just go ahead and delete everything you have in here. You don't need it. If it's empty, you're ready to go. So once we have this folder open, you guys will notice I do actually have some folders in here. And that's because I do actually have some websites in here that I do actually sit and work on right now. But what you want to do is take your root folder and take the actual folder called root folder with all the stuff in it, and then copy it in here. As you guys can see, I do actually have a folder in here called root folder 2, which is my name of my root folder. You guys might just have root folder, doesn't really matter. And once you have it in here, we do actually have the website running on our server. So going inside our browser, let's go ahead and go up into the URL. And let's go ahead and type localhost, enter. And you guys will notice that we get this little nice thing going on. As you guys can see, I can actually see every single folder I have inside my HCDocs folder. You guys might only see your root folder because you only have one folder in there right now. And you can either click it, or we can go back into the URL and say localhost / and then the name of your folder, root folder 2, which is my name for the folder. Enter, and you guys will notice that we do have our website running. Now, since we have it running on our local host now, on a server, we can actually do something with this PHP code. So if I fill out my contact form again, I'm a male, blah, blah, blah. Actually, let's go ahead and say hi. And then submit it. You guys will notice that I get some text up here. It says Daniel Nielsen, which was my first and last name. It says I'm a male. And it says hi. So we do actually have something printed out. And the reason we have this printed out is because we did actually create some code inside our form.php, which our folder is actually running once we hit submit. And we did actually print out our first, last, gender, and message in these last 4 lines. So we're going to go ahead and take this from the bottom again and just kind of talk about what this code means and how to actually make it send an email. So now we do actually have this thing running. So now we can actually go ahead and write some code. Oh, I should mention, every time you want to do some PHP code and you want to open up your root folder again using the server, you need to go in XAMPP and run these 2 servers. You need to do that every time, otherwise you won't see your website inside your local host. So once we have this all figured out, let's actually go ahead and make some code inside our PHP form. So inside here, what we actually did was, if you guys notice inside my browser, at the very top where we did actually submit our form, we did tell it to take our first input field. We have an input field called first, set it equal to whatever I write in there, which was Daniel in this case, and take our input called last, set it equal to whatever I wrote in there called Nielsen, and take the gender, set it equal to whatever I chose in the multiple choice thing, and create a message called hi, because that's what I wrote in my message box. So this is something we can see because we did actually use a get method to send this on to this form. Have we used a post method? Let's actually go ahead and take a look at that inside our HTML form. Up here, we used a get method inside our form, which means we can actually see this inside the URL. And for this example, might as well just use it because we can see it. But some other example where you have to have it more secure, such as username and password and that kind of thing, you want to use a post method. Right now, this is not something that's very secretive, so let's just go ahead and use the get method. So what we're essentially doing is we need to go ahead and go into the URL and tell it to take the value of our first, the value of our last, the value of our gender, the value of our message, and print it out. So inside the code, what we did in the form episode was we did actually go and create a variable, which is we create some kind of object inside PHP. And this variable is going to be equal to what we have in the URL called first. First was equal to something. We get it from the URL using the get method here inside PHP. And we did the same thing with all the 4 ones we included inside the URL. So once we had those, we could actually go ahead and echo them, which means that we're going to write them on the screen. And then I simply echoed out the variables we created from these values we got from the URL, meaning that we do actually print out Daniel Nielsen male hi. So now what we can do is we can actually create our email form below here. So now what we want to do is, first of all, we need to tell it, well, first of all, let's actually go ahead and write the mail function that we need to actually send the mail, which is simply by writing mail, parentheses, open and close, and then semicolon at the end, because we need to write semicolon every time we end PHP code. in between these tags, or like these parentheses, we need to put 4 values in there. We need to tell it who it's going for, like who are we sending it to, what is the subject of the mail, what is the text or the message of the mail, and we need to include something called headers, which tells us, or like tells the person we're sending it to, who it's from. So what we're going to do here is, first of all, we need to get, well, we can actually delete these echoes because I just did it to kind of show you guys we did actually get these values. But the first thing we need is who are we sending it to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and create a value called to, set it equal to the email address I want to send it to. Now, of course, right now I don't want to show you guys my email address. I'm just going to go ahead and say John at doe.com, which is a gibberish email I just made up. You have to put it into either colon, or what is it called? Brackets. No, what is it called? It's called quotation marks or single quotes. You have to put it in between those once it's text. If these were numbers, like numbers only, you can actually write them without the quotes or single quotes. Then we need to close it off at the end. So right now, if we were to echo to, we would actually echo out this email. Underneath here, we need to tell it what the subject is. So I'm just going to go ahead and create another variable called subject. Now you can name these whatever you want them to. I'm just calling it to and subject. You guys can name them whatever you want to. Set them equal to space. And again, we need the quotes or the single quotes. Close it off at the end. And then we need to tell it inside what the subject is. Now the subject in this case could be, for example, my website, if I can write this correctly, website contact form. So now your subject, once it actually sends the email, will actually be my website contact form. The next thing we need to include is something called message, which we did actually get from up here inside the URL. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is we're going to create another variable. Actually, we don't need to do that. We do already have the message up here, so we're just going to keep that for now. The next thing we need to create is something called headers. Now, headers can be a lot of different things. For example, right now we need to create a completely PHP text to the email. Like we need to tell the people that are receiving the email what the first and last name is of this person who just sent the mail. We need to tell them what gender the person is and what the message is. And we're going to do that in PHP in this episode. You can write it in HTML inside the PHP contact form, but then you need to include some more tags inside the header we're going to create right now. And we're just not going to do that in this episode. So now, inside the header, or headers, I'm going to go ahead and call it here, we're going to create who it's from. That's all we're going to do in this episode. So in order to do that, let's just go ahead and make... Now, it doesn't matter if you use single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't matter. I'm just used to using single quotes. So I'm just going to go with that one. But inside here, I'm going to go ahead and say from. And you need to write it like this. You need to write from with a big F, colon, space, and then you need to write who it's from. So we're going to go ahead and write an email address on who it's from. So in this case, if I did actually ask the person for their email inside my contact form, I should probably have done that. If I did actually ask them for the email, I could just have taken the variable we got from the URL called email and used it in here. Okay, so I'm back again. I had to leave really quickly because somebody was knocking on my door, but they left now, so we can actually go ahead and continue with this lesson. Now, right now, we talked about getting an email address from the URL. Now, we don't actually have an email address set up inside our form as an input where they can type in the email and send it. So instead, we're just going to go ahead and create a variable down here called email or mail or something. It doesn't really matter. You can call it whatever you want. Set it equal to some kind of email. So I'm just going to go ahead and say Jane at doe.com and make sure I close it with the semicolon at the end. So now that we have an email, which, by the way, like I said, if you had it from the URL, you could just simply use this code up here and use whatever name you called your input that had the email in it down here instead. But now that we have this, we want to include it down in our headers where we need to say who it's from. And there's two ways you can do this. Either we can just go ahead and take our Jane at doe.com, paste it inside the single quotes after the space, after the colon, and it would actually say it's from Jane at doe.com. But since we have a variable up here with the email in it, you actually need to paste the variable after the single quote, because now we're referencing to this variable up here, which is set equal to this. So if we say it's from a variable called email, it will actually say it's from jane@do.com. Now, the reason we're pasting it outside the single quotes is because inside the single quotes, we're just saying that this is regular text. And if I were to paste this inside the single quotes, you guys can actually see my PHP code actually turns the same color as my text in here, meaning that it doesn't recognize it as PHP code. So we need to put it outside our single quotes, and we also need to put a punctuation in between. Because once you actually switch from regular text like this, or HTML code, because you can actually put HTML code in here by creating like a p tag or something, we need to put a separator called punctuation in between the quotes or the single quotes and the actual PHP code. So now we'll actually say that it's from janedoe.com. So now that we have all these informations here, we can actually go ahead and go down to our email or like our mail function and start filling in. So we need one value to begin with, and the one value that we need to start with is who is it to? And right now we have an email set john@doe.com set to a variable called to. So I'm just gonna go ahead and paste it in there. Then we're gonna say comma, and then we need to add what the subject actually is of this post, or like this contact form. And we do have the subject here. We're just gonna go ahead and paste it in here, like so. Now we need to include the message of the actual contact form, which we have up here. We got it from the URL, paste it below here. And then we need to say what the headers are for this email. And again, we just write a comma and paste it in there. So if I were to send this right now, it wouldn't actually work. Because like I said, you do actually need to have the website online to actually see anything. Because even though we have it on a local server right now, it's actually not connected to the internet. And in order to make it connected to the internet, you need to actually upload it to an online server somewhere. So even though we can't see that it's working, I can promise you guys, this will actually send an email to this person up here with all this information in it. Now, this is how we send it. But what if we want to add a customized message that says, Daniel Nielsen just sent you a message with, just sent you an email with this message, and then we write out the actual message here. Well, what we can do then is we can actually go ahead and just go in between here and create another variable called new message, or we can call it mail message, set it equal to, and then start adding the text we want it to have. So right now, if I were to write, you got a mail from, and then we need to say who it's from. And we do actually have the first name up here. So we go ahead and copy this variable set equal to the first name of the person who filled out the contact form. And we paste it after here. And of course, as well, we need to add a punctuation as a separator. So you got a mail from, and then I should probably add a space in here, Daniel. Then we need to add another piece of text. So we need to write another punctuation, single quotes again. And then we say space with, well, actually no, let's just go ahead and paste in the last name as well. So if we have the last name, so it's Daniel Nielsen, we're gonna go ahead and add a, what do you call it? We're gonna go ahead and just add these single quotes, punctuation, paste in the other variable called last, punctuation, and then we can write our message again with something. Now, the reason we're doing this thing is because it only recognizes the space with the actual text. So we needed to finish off our first name and then say, okay, now we're writing text again. And then we just wrote a single space, which means that now it recognizes the space in here. Then we're gonna say last name, or at least include the last name. And then again, we start a message over here. So if you want space after our last name, we need to add the space first. And then we can say, you got a mail from Daniel Nielsen, who said the following. And then we can say colon. And now if you want to add another line, you're actually gonna have to do it using something called, let's actually go ahead and include it here. you're going to go ahead and include inside, after the, what do you call it, the colon, you're going to say /, if I can actually find on my keyboard here. It's right there, /, and then you're going to say R / N, which means that now we're going to the next line inside our PHP code. This is the PHP way to interpret a new line instead of the BR we used inside our HTML code. So now that we're going to the next line, we can actually start adding some more to our message here. So what we can do here is we can afterwards just go ahead and include our message. So we're going to say punctuation, because we're going to include our message up here, which is PHP code. So we need to add the punctuation to actually tell the difference between HTML and PHP. And then we have the message here, and then we can actually close it off. So now we're saying, you got a mail from Daniel Nielsen, who said the following, the next line, and then the message. Okay, so now we have this. We need to actually change the message down here in the mail function to be mail message instead of message. So now that we have this, it will actually send you guys this to the form. Now, a last thing we might want to need here, after you send the mail, you probably want to send the user back to your front page where you have the contact form. So once we run this form, actually, let's go ahead and go back to our website here so I can show you guys what I mean. If I go down to the bottom, zoom out a little bit, and say Daniel Nielsen mail hi, submit, you guys will notice that we get nothing. That's because we just ran the entire script we just wrote in PHP and it just sent the email. But what now? We didn't tell it where it needed to go afterwards. So inside our code at the very bottom below our mail, we say, okay, after you sent the mail, we're going to say header, which is a function. So we're going to add the parentheses, close it afterwards with a semicolon. And inside the header, we're going to go ahead and say, we need to go inside the header function and we say single quotes. We say location with a big L, colon, space. And then we need to tell it where it needs to go to afterwards. Right now, I think we should just make it go to our index page, our front page. So we're going to say index.html. So now, if I save this, go back inside my website, submit the form, you guys will notice that, whoa, we jump back to the front page. So now we just sent an email to the person we told to inside our form. So this is how you create a contact form using PHP code. And I realize this is PHP and I hope you guys did find it interesting. Now, what we're going to do in the next couple of episodes is we're going to go ahead and just kind of finish off the website. Like right now, we don't have a gallery, we don't have anything. We don't even have a subpage inside this website. So even though this website doesn't look very pretty, we did do a lot of the basics in here. Like this is basically just a template to show off some of the different features you can do with HTML and CSS. And now we did actually include a bit of PHP. So for now, I think this is good in this episode. And in the next couple of episodes, we'll talk about how to actually create galleries and that kind of thing. And then we'll talk about how to actually upload the website at the very end. Now, if you guys have any suggestions to stuff you guys want to learn in this episode or like in this series, go ahead and put it in the comments. I will go ahead and read it. And then I'll actually create a couple of lessons in how to actually do this stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.